Welcome. You're listening to Doopy Deep with Dr. Nikki. This is the place where witty, irreverent, opinionated perspective meets serious, fact-based discussion. Featuring our host, Dr. Nikki Coleman, and her co-host, Tomas Bell. You can also join in the discussion during our live tapings by following us on Spreaker.com. Now, the doctor is in. It's time to get Doopy Deep.
Hello. Oh my goodness. Tomas, don't leave me out here hanging like you weren't just being foolishness.
This is your show.
Tomas is being foolishness in the background while the theme music
I gave you the countdown and told you we are go.
Oh my goodness. And then
so with your utmost professional way, you started the podcast with laughter.
Oh my God. Because we need some laughter after this week. Oh my goodness. It's been a rough week.
It has.
So let me first say I apologize to listeners because down here in Houston, Texas, spring has put the smackdown on everybody here that has nostrils and airways. The pollen is so thick, it's so ridiculous. I'm taking allergy medication on the daily, but still have itchy, watery eyes. And as you can hear, I have a little bit more bass in my voice than is typical.
Must be nice. We had a nor'easter. But you know, keep going with your personal problems.
Excuse me. So I apologize for the excessive throat clearing and maybe even coughing. I will try to mute my mic as much as possible for today. Welcome back, everybody. I just so I do want to. We have a show planned today for sure. We're going to talk about body positivity. And I'm really interested to get into it. The interesting part about today's topic is I feel like I have maybe more questions than answers on the topic. And so if I'm struggling with trying to wrap my brain around these ideas, I'm guessing other folks are as well. And then, so what I try to do is make sure I'm clear. So I pick topics. Tomas always asks me, what do you want to do the show on? What are we talking about this week? And I kind of have a roadmap for the big picture for the season, and knew I wanted to talk about this topic. And so I'll do my homework and make sure that, I'm clear on the latest research and stats, et cetera, et cetera. Tomas does a much better job of figuring out kind of what's going on in the social media Twitter sphere around the topic, and then we kind of come together and talk. And so I want to go somewhere for just a second, Tomas, that you are not prepared for. But something struck me in making my notes for today's show and reading about body positivity and I guess maybe just reading the words for the phrase over and over again. And so let me say that the working definition that I use, and I'm sure you will see different ones out there that are variations on a theme, but the working definition that I use is that body positivity is a movement and a concept that encourages people to celebrate the bodies they are in for what it can do for them and to define their own standards of health and beauty for themselves rather than relying on an external, narrow, typically Eurocentric standard. And so I think there's lots of ways that we can move forward in having a conversation, and some of the things you and I have talked about. But what are the things that's just is on my mind that I feel like I would be doing a disservice to our listeners, as well as not being authentic to myself and to what I want this show to be, is recognizing the latest victim of a police shooting that happened this week in Sacramento, California. And it's been a rough week for that, right? So on the heels of living here in Houston, we had some bombings that were happening in the city of Austin, which is about 2.5 to 3 hours northwest of where we live. It started a couple weeks ago, and there were 3 victims of bombings that had been packages that had been mailed to people. 2 African American men, actually one a young person, a teenager, and the third was I'm not sure of his ethnicity. Do you know, Tomas? I know he was Latino, but I'm not sure of his specific ethnicity.
I'm not sure. No.
And then things resulted in there being a quote unquote standoff on Wednesday this week. And was it Wednesday or Thursday?
I want to say Wednesday, but I can double check that for you right now.
Yeah, I think it was Wednesday, and the person who was the bomber ended up blowing himself up. So that happened, and then in Sacramento, California, police responded to a call for a disturbance in a neighborhood that resulted in Stephen Clark being brutally murdered, and I'm using that language intentionally, in his own backyard. Shot 20 times, apparently 10 rounds by 2 different police officers, standing in his backyard because they, quote, worried or feared for their life, end quote. And they saw his cell phone that was in his hand as a gun or weapon or a threat, and used that to justify killing him. And so the reason why I bring that up is because both of those things are heavy on my heart. I've had for all of the nationally known, well-known cases of young men and women that have been murdered as a result of coming across the wrong cop on the wrong day here in our country over the past several years, they always hit me hard. Some of them harder than others for sure, but they always hit me hard. I think I'm really struggling with this one because it reinforces this idea that's becoming more and more of our reality, that you really aren't safe anywhere. And the connection that I'm making here to the topic of body positivity is a lot of the discourse that I've been reading in kind of juxtaposing these 2 incidents, right? So the Austin bomber with the killing of Stephen Clark. A conversation comes around how our bodies are read, right? How we are perceived by others external to us, and how more often than not, Black bodies are seen as threats, and that they are seen as significant enough threats that it justifies homicide, at best harassment, and humiliation, denigration, dehumanization. And white bodies are not read in the same way. So we have all of these incidents where white men that have committed large-scale acts of violence, acts of terrorism, if you will, there's a pattern in which they are always able to be taken alive and taken unharmed into custody. And yet we also have this concurrent pattern of Black men in being in seemingly harmless situations and or actually cooperating and being law-abiding, not being regarded with the same level of respect, care, or humanity. And so in reading this concept around body positivity, I think it has a rather elastic frame, and it comes to me to wonder how, if you were walking around in the United States as a Black man or Black woman, how body positive could you really be? And I'm sure that is not, I know for sure the kind of the derivation of the meaning, the movement came out of treatment and working with young women, primarily with eating disorders and specifically with anorexia. So I know it was not the intent of the founders of this movement to think about it in these terms. but the beauty of social construction and psychology is that we have malleable ideas that we can pull and shape and apply to different communities. And one of the other inherent ethos involved with body positivity is that it's supposed to open up a working framework for people from a variety of different body presentations to find beauty and empowerment and respect and regard for their own bodies, right? So it's supposed to be one movement of inclusivity rather than one of exclusivity. And I just, I don't know that I don't know how to find the balance between being able to celebrate the body you're in if the body you're in is coded as one that represents threat and harm to others inherently in the structures that we have set up in our society. And so I'm kind of struggling with that today. I'm struggling with my anger. I'm struggling with my sense of powerlessness. I'm struggling with my sadness and grief and fatigue as well, right? Because like these are problems that we're experiencing in this country that aren't going away, and that kind of seem to be getting exponentially worse over time and not better. So that's kind of the space I'm in today, Tomas. Not real laughy, jokey. So I don't know. Am I going too far in trying to stretch this idea? Am I making a connection between these two that really shouldn't be made? What are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking hashtag thoughts and prayers, hashtag Black Lives Matter, hashtag Blue Lives Matter, and what's the next topic?
Wow.
Because every time something like this happens, it becomes a digital movement that lasts for a week, 2 weeks. It trends. It becomes the hot topic, the hot trending topic. And then we move on because Kim Kardashian has a new lipstick, or, you know, I don't know, Kaya and T.S. Madison are breaking up on the Queen's Court. You know, there are things we need to discuss. We cannot discuss this. That was Wednesday's trending topic. Let's move on.
Yeah.
So in the conversation of body positivity, we have a choice to make, which ironically, one of the definitions about body positivity that I found included the word forgiveness, which I had a problem with, and we can talk about that later. But we have a choice to make as people of color, right? To your point, we can embrace the body positive movement as it was intended, which is about embracing one's body and what that means. Right. And when you're talking about body, we're mostly talking about the physical self, though there are trains of thought that say, yes, it also includes the color of one's skin, the color of one's eyes, the texture of one's hair. That is true. But that's a byproduct, right? So we as people of color can benefit from the movement because we do have issues, a lot of us, with our bodies, with our health, and with loving ourselves and looking at our reflection and feeling affirmed in that. Yeah. But we have to do more work, as we have to with everything in this country.
Good Lord.
We have to do more work if we want to benefit from the things. So it's not enough for us. I don't think that we need to necessarily negate the movement or necessarily say, oh, it's not meaningful. It is very meaningful. It's just not going to answer everything that we need.
Right. Okay.
And I have that same argument with feminism, actually, or with anything that still comes from a Eurocentric perspective. It automatically doesn't include us. And that's fine, because it doesn't mean we can benefit. We can't benefit. We can, and we should. Because if we don't show up, our voices are not heard. So I don't want people to stand in rooms and say, this ain't for me. I want people to stand in rooms and say, how can we make this for us collectively?
And that's what I think needs to happen more with the body positive movement. So that when we see something that says, what is this? The free